Are you trying to dominate your fantasy football league? Do you want so many championship rings it's impossible to sign autographs? Well, crack open a beer, pour yourself a glass of bourbon, and settle in, because you've come to the right place. Welcome to Hammercast.
Welcome to the Hammercast podcast here at the Double D's podcast. And we are here, and I'm your host, Kevin Coleman. And on this episode of the podcast, we have special guest, David Goedert, who is a writer for Fantasy and Frames and the creator of Guru Fantasy World. And he's someone that I wanted on the podcast for a while. He's one of the best guys on this site he's just a good guy. And I value that. He's smart. He's analytical, which I'm not either one of those. So I wanted to bring him on here. And, you know, he's also a lover of all things redraft. And we don't find a lot of redraft people out there anymore. They're I mean, in normal spaces, us degenerates, we're more of a dynasty kind of area there. And David, thanks for coming on. And why don't you tell our listeners some of your work that you've been doing recently?
Yeah, recently I've been trying to get the website going for you guys. Right now I just have a little blog spot. It's just a little blog. It's pinned to my profile. It's just some strategies. I don't have any recent content. Mm-hmm. I'm learning WordPress as I go. So that's the next challenge, is figuring out WordPress, getting you guys a full website. My goal to give you guys, I'll give you a little background, basically my story as a writer, because I was a writer before I was a fantasy football writer. I got into writing. I had a couple just dark years in my high school time. I had relationship issues with the law, issues with my parents. My issues had issues. So I needed to figure some way out, to just kind of get through it, to get my shit straight and, get my mental health where it needed to be. And writing was my outlet. And I got a journal one year from my parents, started journaling my thoughts. Next thing I know, it's just taking on a life of its own. I was a business major at this time in college for about a year and switched my major to English because I just wanted to go full throttle with it. Yeah. Short stories and poetry was actually where I was originally going to go with my degree. Okay. And, but then about 2 years ago, I started writing on Facebook. My first name was the Fantasy Guru. I'm sure I'm not the first to use that, and I won't be the last. But somewhere along the line, it didn't feel genuine. I'm just a person working on myself, trying to get my own stuff together. Yeah. And I didn't want to put myself on a pedestal like that. And it clicked one day, Guru Fantasy World. That's what I want to put. I don't want to be the fantasy guru. I want to create something, an environment for people to utilize tools so they can unlock their own inner guru, whatever, in what way that is. So over the past 2 years, it's changed to Guru Fantasy World. And now my goal ultimately is to build an encyclopedia full of strategies and ultimately terms, acronyms, everything. Mm-hmm. So if somebody doesn't know something, they have a place to go. They have the information. A lot of it will be for new beginners. Yeah. So that's what I'm working towards, is getting that ready. And I've also been doing a few tight end projects along the way to keep myself busy.
Hey, I love that, man. I love the fact that you found your passion, right? Like, we all try to find passion. This is something new to me. I've been doing it for a year, but I found something I really enjoy. Like, I enjoy writing. I enjoy kind of diving into analytical stuff now. I'm learning it. So, and that's the reason I brought you on, is because I feel there's passion there. Like, it's not about money. It's not about these other type of things that happen. It's about passion for the game that we love and to give back, right?
Yeah, I feel like me and you are always on the same page. You're one of my probably best friends on Twitter. It's it's fun. At the end of the game, you have to do it for fun. If you're doing it for anything else, why? And I ask you why.
Yeah. No, I get it. And I think that's why we connect really well. And the reason why I have you on too is you're a tight end guy. I love my tight ends. I'm a big Debbie guy, and I love Debbie tight ends. It's one of the things that I will dive in on a Debbie article for tight ends for hours. I don't care about the quarterbacks. I will go in. I will find, some Cole Turner from Nevada, these guys that I absolutely love. And these other guys, I'm just like, I don't care about them. And I love the fact that on your bio, it says a top tight end means more than you think. Write it on my tombstone. So I had to get him on. It's the one area of this podcast that we haven't talked about, which is Dynasty tight ends. So I wanted to give David the shot. We're going to go through his rankings. So we're going to go through the 2021 Dynasty tight end rankings today. But before we get to like his rankings, we're going to kind of go through some strategies. We have some questions from fans, some other guys that we have there, and some groups. So first thing we're going to be looking at is basically your strategies, measurables, and advantages. So kind of in that area. So when you're drafting tight ends and redraft, we can start with redraft and Dynasty. After you look at the top three, I mean, first of all, how early are you comfortable taking a guy like Kittle, Waller, or Kelce? Because I've switched this. I've actually gone to where, like, if I'm at 6, I actually don't hate drafting the tight end. Where does your opinion on that go? Where are you drafting tight ends at?
You're about to uncork the genie, my friend. Uncork or Pandora, or whatever you call it. Because if you're gonna ask, we're gonna go there. I thought we were gonna cover rankings, but if you want to know, I will take Travis Kelce first overall next year, and I've got a full thread, a full article already written. Just needs the finishing details, but I've got a case to take Travis Kelce 101, and I will gladly take Darren Waller and George Kittle in the first round as well. To give you a little bit, I won't give you the full thread, but basically to give you an idea of where I'm coming from tight ends, why I'm willing to take Travis Kelce first overall. I know this was going to be your first question. I value them as the most important position in fantasy football and as the scarcest position in fantasy football. And it started years ago when I would try it with Jimmy Graham, take him early, and I just had this feeling tight end was the most difficult position to find. And the past few years, I've kind of looked into the numbers, and it backs that up.
Yeah.
If you look last year at players that scored 150 points, basically we're talking the usable tight ends here. He had 29 quarterbacks, 30 running backs, 50 wide receivers, 50 hit 150 points last year, 7 tight ends, 7. Okay, to give you those 7 tight ends, that was Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, Logan Thomas, Robert Tonyan, T.J. Hockenson, and Mike Gesicki. And George Kittle obviously would have as well. So we'll say 8 tight ends. That's in a 12-team league. That's not even enough for everybody to get one.
Yeah.
And you look at running backs, 30. You fill 2 slots. That's more than enough for 2 per. So the idea that a lot of people hold against tight ends, you have to start 2 running backs. You only have to start 1 tight end. It's mathematically more difficult to find 1 tight end than it is to find 2 running backs.
Yeah.
It's more difficult to fill 1 tight end slot than 2 running backs. So that pushes Travis Kelce up the board. If you want to talk about Travis Kelce to start, before we get to the rankings, I guess, the way I look at him, he was our RB4 last year, okay? Running back 4. That's how I want you to look at him in both points per game and total points. He has 80 receptions and 1,000+ yards in 5 straight seasons, okay? The only other active players who have done that, Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, and I believe the recently retired, I'm not sure if he's going to retire, Larry Fitzgerald. 3 guys. And Travis Kelce, he's got 97+ receptions and 1,200+ yards in 3 straight seasons. He had his best year last year. Again, RB4. Not only is he the RB4, looking like that, where would you take the RB4 in a fantasy draft?
Yeah.
He's the most durable running back in the league. He hasn't missed a game to injury in 7 straight seasons.
Yeah.
7 straight seasons without missing a game. So he's RB4 points per game. He's durable. That pushes him up into the top 3 conversation right there. And then we just talk about the scarcity again. You have like 6 tight ends, 7 tight ends, maybe 8 in a year to 12 teams. There's not enough to go around. You have 30 running backs. And then you want to talk about streaming, because this is a whole another element to the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Not only... Okay.
I would like to talk about stream. No, what I'm saying, I'm agree with you on the top 3. I feel like it is a positional advantage to take one of those guys. And I think that I've always heard, even growing up, that you can wait on tight ends, you can stream, especially in redraft. Everybody always says you can stream. Now, I have tried this. Sometimes it works because you get lucky. A lot of the times you get lucky because you draft some guy that has their breakout, whatever that breakout looks like. Maybe it does as a breakout, but you probably drafted pretty strong in the first few rounds and you hit on some running backs and some wide receivers. I don't think that works anymore. What about you?
It's a complete fallacy streaming tight ends. And I'll tell you why. We talked about those 7 tight ends last year, right, who had 150 points. Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, Robert Tonyan, Logan Thomas, TJ Hockenson, and Mike Gesicki. 7 tight ends, okay? Can you name another tight end who you felt comfortable starting from the beginning of the year to the end of the year and you didn't feel like you had to take him out at any point?
Blake Jarwin until he got hurt would have been my guy, but he got hurt.
Exactly. So. I've asked people this question. The best answer I got was Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill. But like, that's the point. Like, you didn't have another guy outside of those 7 guys, 6 guys, because I don't count Mike Gesicki. He wasn't reliable either. You didn't have someone you trusted start to finish. So that meant you were rotating 2 guys. Okay. And at running back, I talked about you have 30 running backs who hit 150-point threshold. When you look at all the other streamers, you had like Tony Pollard, Jeff Wilson, Leonard Fournette, Darrell Henderson, Kalen Ballage, Savant Ahmed. There's so many of them. I can't even name them all off the top of my head. I have it written down. But at tight end, you don't have, all we had was Irv Smith for a couple weeks. And at running back, you're rostering multiple running backs, right? You're rostering 3, 4 running backs. You're expecting to rotate your RB2 a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. You're expecting to stream that position almost within your roster. At tight end, there is a philosophical difference working against you that most people have no idea even exists. Because what happens at tight end? Do you expect to ever have to stream? Is that the ideal? No, nobody wants to stream. We get caught into chasing last week's performance because we want a guy we can put in that spot, in that one spot, and leave him and forget about it and start to finish. So if a guy has a good week last week, we feel obligated. I want him to be the guy that I just ride. So if he had a good week last week, I put him in this next week. And then you're picking the wrong guy because you're just chasing last week, chasing. And you're actually costing yourself more points than if you had just left one guy in from the beginning. Like I saw a tweet from Backyard, I think Backyard Fantasy it was. They streamed tight ends for 5 weeks in a row. It was like 1.5, 1.5, 1.3, 3.8. Like the points were awful because they were just picking last week's guy. Yeah. Because that's what you feel obligated to do because it's a wasteland. It's a wasteland. If there's something to use, it's because he did something last week. But the likelihood of a tight end doing it the next week, who's not like a top 3 performer, it's just not high. So you have that working against you. You're not able to just look at the matchups and just pick the better tight end like you would at running back, where you just pick the best matchup because you're just rotating these guys and it's part of the plan. Yeah. At tight end, you have that it shouldn't be part of the plan. Deep down, you don't want it to be part of the plan. So you're just kind of chasing. It's not good.
Yeah, no, I will say that. I think streaming's too stressful for me. I just, like you said, I want a guy that I can plug and play, guys that I know are in there. And really, in reality, there's only like 6 or 7, like we keep mentioning, that you can do that with. So that's why you got to try to reach up and get some of those guys. We had some other questions that someone asked. They asked if we should get rid of the position, just make it wide receiver flex. No, that is stupid. I respect the question.
I'm glad you said it.
No, I respect the question because I see it all the time. So the person that asked the question, I love him.
No question is stupid.
The idea, the concept itself, I hear it and I'm like, that's not fair. First of all, the tight end position is part of the fantasy football. And also I will warn you guys, I joined a league like that a few years ago that had that option and it dissolved after the first year. Because what we found was it was just like 6 tight ends and then every other wide receiver was taken. Well, running backs, it was not a good format of the league, and the league folded because then we couldn't bring back the tight end because we had just drafted with no tight end. It was a cluster. So what I would say is no for that. What I do want to know from you, though, historically, they say historically tight ends are slow to develop. What are you looking for when you're scouting tight ends and you're looking for that breakout or that measurable? Like, we have Kyle Pitts. We'll talk about him. We don't need to talk about him right now. But just overall tight ends, what are some measurables you try to find?
That's a great question. And I actually have a little bit of a blueprint. Mm-hmm. And I took Jax Falcone's. He does an anatomy of a top 16 Dynasty tight end. And he does it, I believe, for like the top 20 or something running backs or whatever. And basically, he looks at what do the guys look like? What are the relevant metrics? And I sent you this chart for my rankings as well. And it's basically, we want to look at, I have about 10 different boxes here. We want to look at their height, their weight, their draft capital, their 40, Again, he has speed score as well. I didn't include that because it seems a little redundant. I'm already tracking the height and 40. But I added vertical. And then we want to track like the college stats as well, the dominator, the college yards per reception. I added breakout age to my checklist, not as something that's needed because if you look, it's not needed for college. A lot of these top 10s didn't break out till they're late, but kind of as like a bonus, just if you want to see who broke out early. Also look at catch radius, and then ultimately NFL production is like the bottom line, the most important thing. So that's the 10th box that I just added into Jax's anatomical checklist and kind of made my own.
Mm-hmm. No, I loved it. I love I like the college yards per reception. Dominator rating is always big for me. Draft capital is too. And when you look at the draft capital, it's interesting to see where some of these guys go because you always have the Waller and Kittles, and they kind of they didn't have the highest draft capital, but what we see, I think situation matters too. And then also their college they played at. You have to look at what they did in college, but also the system because that can inflate certain players and it can decrease their value because some of these systems just don't fit for tight ends, especially at the college level. Yeah,
well, I will say this. For Kittle, he had a lot of injuries at Iowa. He had a major knee. It was a knee or a foot injury his first year, I forget. And then he missed 7 games combined as a junior and a senior. So he had that working against him, but he checked all the other boxes. He had the 40, the 4.52, 38.5-inch vertical. His dominator, 23.2. That's solid. 14.3 yards per reception. So anyone who says he came out of nowhere, that's why his draft capital was in the 5th round and not the 3rd or the 2nd. Darren Waller had noted drug issues at Georgia Tech. If you watch, they have a fantastic special on NFL Network about Darren Waller. And he's so open about it. It's one of the reasons I'm such a fan of this guy. Yeah. He's so open about it, it's clearly like behind him, and it's an entire story. He was just on every kind of drug imaginable. What he said, whatever you put in front of him. And John Harbaugh knew about it. John Harbaugh talks about it in the interview with Darren Waller, and he says, "Yeah, we knew this guy. He had issues. He was suspended from Georgia Tech, I believe, for a couple of games for this, and he was borderline undraftable because of the character concerns." And if you look at his anatomical checklist as well, 4.46 40, 37-inch vertical, 32.1 dominator. He had a 17 yards per reception. I mean, he checked every box. You could see this guy coming from a mile away if you got past the character issues. He would have been like a 1st or a 2nd round pick as well. Travis Kelce, people think, he was unpredictable as well. He was lately drafted. He was suspended an entire year at Cincinnati for breaking team rules. He came into the NFL. He could only participate in one drill at his pro day because he was coming off hernia surgery. He got sick and couldn't perform in any other drills. Still drafted with the 1st pick in the 3rd round. So those 3, people say a lot of times came out of nowhere. The elite ones were unpredictable. They absolutely were predictable, and if you didn't see it coming, you just weren't looking hard enough, to be frankly honest.
No, that's fair. I think with all these things, that's why I love your sheet, and that's why you need to follow David so you know what he's talking about here. His checklist checks everything off. It will hit like, hey, his draft capital is here, but let's look at his dominator rating. Let's look at everything and put everything in perspective and tell the whole story. So I appreciate it, especially going through your process. We're going to go through his rankings now, and what we're going to do, we're going to go from 12 and work our way up. And I will say there's a lot of divide. There's a big drop off, and we go through these guys. There's just a cluster of guys in the middle. So that's why we're going to start there. We're going to be looking at his Dynasty tight end rankings right now. We're going to start with number 12, and so we're going to work our way up. Who is your number 12 tight end?
Today, it's like you said, it's a cluster. I have 10 through 21 as one tier.
Yeah.
So it is like, however I'm feeling that day, what little bit of information I take here and there, it's very tough. And right now it's Robert Tonyan. I think he's in a great position this year to perform again. They haven't added any notable of the big name receivers in free agency. Again, they could add receiver in the draft. That may bump him down a ranking or 2. in that tier for me. But he's 27. He checks a lot of the boxes. He's an athlete, 4'5'8" at his 40, 35-inch vertical. It was a small school. I don't really care about the dominator at a small school because, to be frank, he wouldn't be drafted if he didn't dominate at a small school. He wouldn't exist. But he was very good in college. He's very fast, and Aaron Rodgers seems to like him. And he's in a scheme with a coaching staff that wants to and seems inclined to utilize him. I believe his role will probably grow in the way that they use him on the field going into next year. It was really his first year with full utilization. Aaron Rodgers threw 48 touchdowns last year. 48 touchdowns. So at 12 at back end and tight end one, I think you're shooting for upside more than anything, because if you pass on like these top 3, especially top 5, 6, 7, I'd say there's probably 7. Once you get past like TJ Hockenson and Mark Andrews, you're just shooting for the moon and you're shooting for upside. So I don't mind taking a little bit of a chance on Robert Tonyan.
Yeah, no, I think it's when you're looking at your list, and it's around mine too. After you got to kind of go with he scores touchdowns. I don't think that's, he scored 11 last year. He finished as tight end 4 last year. Now that's, as we talk about it, it was a drop, but he did finish as tight end 4. I liked his targets. I think he was a little bit, I don't want to say touchdown dependent, but if you look at what they've done this offseason, they've done nothing. So they have Allen Lazard still there, Devontae Adams. They still have the same guys. So I do like Tonyan being there. And he could be one of these guys. I think his ADP is still pretty low compared to what I would expect it to be, because he gets kind of slept on a little bit. So he's a good value guy as your backup tight end if you grabbed him, if you grabbed one of these earlier guys. And that's where we talked about where you can have 2 guys that you can rely on, especially with Tonyan scoring touchdowns. So I do like the Tonyan pick. I think, Aaron Rodgers is still there. As long as Aaron Rodgers is still there, I'm still loving my tight ends from there, especially because I think they utilize him in that offense better than what they have in the past, especially with Mike McCarthy. I don't want to talk about Mike McCarthy. He's a terrible coach. All right, so let's go to your 11. Who is your 11?
And just to put in perspective, because you said tight end 4, that what that means in terms of the landscape of the tight ends relative. He was actually tight end 5 in points per game. You had Travis Kelce, 20.9 points per game. Darren Waller, 17.4. Kittle, 15.6. And that was dealing with the injuries as well. Then you had Andrews at 12 points per game. Tonyan, Thomas, Hockenson, 11 points per game. Gesicki, Goddard, Hunter Henry, Fant, and Jonnu between 11 and 10. And then you have 15 other tight ends between 9 and 8.5. So basically it's 3 guys up top, and then a giant just cluster bomb of basically replacement. Even like Mark Andrews, he was 1.2 points per game above like replacement.
Yeah.
And Travis Kelce was 2.5 points per game above Darren Waller. Like he's a bigger gap than TJ Hockenson to like Dalton Schultz, from Kelce to Waller. Like it's just an astronomical gap. He's almost double. He's like basically double every other tight end in the league. You're getting a 10-point per game advantage over everyone who doesn't roster Darren Waller and George Kittle, essentially. It's insane what Travis Kelce does for your team.
Yeah, no, I think it is. And I think it's important to look, the numbers that you're going to see down there before he finished, that's total points, but points per game is smart average. But again, you're looking at kind of Tonyan being around that 11.1. So that's generally where it's at. I'm really interested to hear what your take is for this next guy, because you either love this next guy or you hate this next guy. There's really no in between with your tight end 11. Well, I want to hear your love. Tell me what you think is good about him. So who do you have there?
It's Evan Engram. And this is a guy who I had bumped a little bit lower before I had done this anatomical checklist of the tight ends.
Yeah.
And really putting aside like all of the athleticism and the college dominator, which he checks all these boxes. I mean, by far, he was great at. You just don't see NFL production boxes. Like I color-coded them green, yellow, and red. He's the only guy who like starts his career with 3 in green. He has 11 plus points per game, 11.5 plus points per game in 3 out of 4 years. He hasn't gone below 8.8. We just talked about 11 points per game. How many of those tight ends did it last year? It was 5 of them, 6 of them. And now he's at 11. He's a lot lower in a lot of people's rankings. You can get him lower than tight end 11 in a lot of like startup leagues. You can get him cheap. You can get him as your tight end too. And then you just look at, again, all of the athleticism, 4'4", 240, 36-inch vertical. He dominated in college, 29.5% dominator rating. And it's just, it feels like such a great time to buy him to me, because you look at last year, it was the bottom, 8.8 points per game. He had like 13 drops. That was his career worst in drops. He didn't have that issue the past 2 years nearly as bad. He was at 4.7 and like 4.4% drop rate in year 2 and year 3. He had issues as a rookie.
Yeah.
But he was at like 11% drop rate last year. So basically 2 out of 4 years, he's at 10% drop rate. 2 out of 4, he's at a 5% drop rate. He only had 1 touchdown last year too. So the drops will normalize likely. The touchdowns are almost a guarantee to go up. Yeah. He's probably going to end up 3 out of 4 years. He's gone over 11 points per game. He's probably going to do it again. Look for tight ends who have done that. You don't see very many of them around.
Yeah, I'm an Evan Engram stan, and I'm a Cowboy fan, so it kind of sucks. But I do believe in him as a talent. I do think that the addition of Galladay is going to help him. I see some people saying out there that it's going to hurt it. That's stupid, because it's going to take away.
The offense has so much room to improve.
Yeah, it has so much room. I think Daniel Jones will take that step. I think he's a serviceable quarterback. I'm not putting him in the top tier, but I think he has that ability. Barkley coming back, it's going to hold totally new game. I think what he did last year is actually, I don't want to say impressive, but it's better than what I would expect, because he definitely got the brunt end of defensive fronts and schemes. So he definitely had that. They had to keep him in block a little bit. I know he's not the greatest blocker, but that offensive line was in shambles last year. It was mixed match. There was injuries. They didn't really finish very well. I get worried about the Jason Garrett kind of system. I just want him to use him better. And as a Cowboy fan, I've watched Jason Garrett, guys.
I wanted him to get fired so bad.
That's really the only thing that holds me back for Evan Engram having him any higher, is because Jason Garrett is a problem. And Jason Garrett has always been a problem, and he doesn't know how to utilize talents like Engram. He can utilize Jason Witten's slow ass out there. He's not going to be able to utilize Evan Engram because he doesn't put him in the right spot. So I'm hoping that changes, but he is going to see an uptick in touchdowns. If you watched him at all last year, because I had him on my teams, he got stopped at the one. I think it was like 3 or 4 times last year where he could have scored, or he had scoring opportunities. So I believe that number will hover around 7. I could see that. And the increased targets, I think he's going to have a better scheme, better offense around him. It's just, damn it, Jason Garrett. That's the only, he's still there, right?
Yeah, I agree. It does put definitely a ceiling cap for this year, I would say, because Jason Garrett doesn't even season his chicken, I bet. The guy just, like you said, he just is not utilizing him properly. But again, this is year 2, the same system. Even it's a crap system. Year 2 in the same system, you should be able to play more, think less, and hopefully they can utilize him. Even if they utilize him the same. You would expect progression in year 2. So it's definitely a worry. I agree with that one 100%.
No, I like that. I like that call. And I think that's, he finishes 14th overall points at 11 right now. You're going to see a little bit higher. I
want to say one more concern that a lot of people have is the Kyle Rudolph signing. It doesn't really concern me at all. Caden Smith played for like 430 snaps last year. He was on the field a lot. I really think Kyle Rudolph is coming in to upgrade that role in their offense as opposed to take away from what they do with Evan Engram.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kyle Rudolph shouldn't scare dynasty owners. You shouldn't be worried about that. Rudolph he's on the downside there. No, that's a good point there. Who do you have at 10?
10 right now, today. I'm going to say that with all these guys in this tier. Right now, today, I have Jonnu Smith. I prefer him out of the 2 New England tight ends over Hunter Henry. He's just barely a little bit younger, but that's really not a tiebreaker. He's faster. He's just got way more upside. 4.62 to Hunter Henry's 4.72. 38-inch vertical. He had 33% dominator against smaller school. He broke out at age 18 in college. There's very, very few guys on this list here who broke out at 18.
Yeah.
I just think right now he got paid. He's with coordinators and a coaching staff that I believe is I'm from New Hampshire, to put things in perspective. So I'm a Ravens fan, grown up and born and raised in New Hampshire. So I have had to deal with the Patriots my whole life, and I know exactly how smart Bill Belichick and his coaching staff can be. So I have to believe when they go out and they pay a guy who I like athletically, who I like what his college profile says, and he really has no other target competition other than Hunter Henry, who's good, and Nelson Aguilar. I mean, and Jacoby Myers, I like. Yeah. But again, he could easily lead this team in receiving. So I will shoot for the upside. I'll shoot for the moon with Jonnu Smith at 10.
Yeah, I remember Jonnu Smith before last year. Everybody was talking about him. I can't tell you how many breakout tight end articles I read of Jonnu Smith, and I'm like, yeah, no,
I might swap him with my 9. Just talking about him, you know. Yeah, I might swap him right here, just because I don't know if I'm going to be as excited about talking about my 9.
No, I can see that actually. I love Smith, and I love his athletic profile, like you said. His breakout age, it was incredible. I think last year he was on his way to be I feel like a top 6 tight end. He got that injury in that ankle and his leg, and it definitely put him in there. They lost their left tackle. He had to block a little bit more scheme wise. I wasn't in love with Tennessee's scheme, what they tried to do there. They did fine, but it doesn't really work well for him. Corey Davis breakout definitely hurt him a little bit too, because then they have that second kind of receiving option. Everybody talked about Corey Davis as being like an outlier, not really anything to worry about. And then he kind of put that role on the production. But like you said, Patriots kind of the opposite of what we talked about with Engram. I don't trust Garrett. I trust McDaniels and Belichick to utilize him, because I feel like they spent that money for a reason. They're going to put him in spots, and he's good enough to line in the slot. He's good enough to go up the seams. He's good enough to be versatile all the way on that offense. I love it, and I think he's going to be a red zone threat too.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to put him above my tight end 9, to be honest. Because I'm just like so torn with my tight end 9.
Who is it? Go.
I'll get right. It's Mike Gesicki.
Yes, and I was shocked by this. I'm going to be honest. I was a little shocked by this.
You think he should be a lot lower?
Not a lot lower, but I just thought Smith would be it would kind of be above.
Jonnu over Gesicki. And I think I'm going to commit to that. It just because Gesicki, I have his 40 in his vertical. That's in his draft capital. That's really it. He didn't dominate in college. He was a late breakout, which you don't hold it against him. He averaged 9.9 yards per reception in college.
Yeah.
9.9. That is colored in red in my chart, just to make that clear. And then the pro production, he did little to nothing as a pro. 2.9 points per game, 8.5 year 2, 10.6. I mean, I like Tua, but I feel like they're going to add some pieces here. I'm probably going to bump Gesicki down to 10, and I might even put him below Evan Engram, to be honest. I like him. The upside is there, but I feel like he's very raw, and I'm not sure he's ever going to put it all together. See,
look at this. You're seeing live changes to his draft. This is how messed up the tight end position is, guy. We don't know.
It is. It's so tough, that tier right there. That's why you get a top 3 tight end. You don't have to worry about it.
So that's what, like with Mike Gesicki, that's what I'm talking about with him. I think the only thing I was worried about is, like, I expected better numbers based on there was nothing there last year. Preston Williams got hurt. Parker was hurt. When you're looking at these kind of and I know Tua had his struggles. Fitzpatrick did target him. He had a couple big games, Cincinnati, Kansas City, but Cincinnati was bad. Kansas City's defense they didn't look great against tight ends. He scored touchdowns. He was able to touchdown dependent in those 2 games. Other than that, I didn't necessarily love what I saw from him. But then now adding Fuller, I'm assuming they're going to add another weapon. I've seen Pitts somewhere. I don't know how you would feel about that. I saw Chase, Waddle, some of these other guys. So that's the only thing I don't know necessarily if I want to take him. I'd rather take your next guy as your tight end 8 or Smith or even Engram, just because I feel more comfortable with him.
Yeah, I will just say this to make things clear. I am taking every tight end who is not Noah Fant in my rankings and trying to turn them into Noah Fant. So take Mike Gesicki and try and turn him into Noah Fant. If not Kyle Pitts, I don't think you can turn any of these lower tier tight ends into Kyle Pitts. But Noah Fant, this is like your last chance, and we'll get to him. These guys are all like chips to me. They're all sells. Almost every single one of them is a sell. Go up the tight end ladder. Go up it. Don't go down it. Go up it. Try and flip Gesicki into Hockenson if you can. Then try and flip Hockenson into George Kittle if you can. Like, you want to go up the tight end ladder, solve the issue, and be done with it, and just have peace of mind, and then go address wide receiver, which is the deepest position there is. Running back, well, I should say running back first. Wide receiver, forget about it later. Then address running back. Get up the tight end ladder. So we can continue with the rankings with that in mind.
Who's your tight end 8 then? Let's keep going up this ladder now. Okay, who's your tight end 8?
Tight end 8 here is Dallas Goedert, who a lot of it to me has to do with the NFL production.
Yeah,
he produced right away. 6 points per game as a rookie, which is not fantastic, but he produced. 9.7 points per game year 2. Last year he dealt with injuries, but still produced. He was selected highly. I don't have a 40, which is like the one thing that keeps me up at night, is that I just don't have a 40. I just have to wonder until the end of time what he ran in his 40. But he had a 35-inch vertical. That's good. Dominated small school. Again, I don't really care about that. 14.7 yards per reception. He checks basically every single box, minus the 40, which I don't have, unfortunately. And he's in a great position. They didn't go out and add anybody major in free agency. They could in the draft. I expect them to add a wide receiver. I don't think Pitts will probably be on the board by the time, so that's another good thing for him, that they traded down. I think that's probably even if that's not what they meant, it's a sign of faith in Goddard that they're probably not getting Pitts, or they're willing to take a chance not getting Pitts. So in that territory, I like Dallas Goedert. Again, if I can turn him into Noah Fant, go pay a little bit, go turn him into Noah Fant. I'm going to say Noah Fant after every guy I talk about until we get to Noah Fant.
Are you worried it hurts at all? Do you think he'll be okay?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you look at the completion percentage, I'm a very, very pro Hurts guy.
All right.
If you look at the completion percentage alone, sure, it's cause for concern. But look at the way Jalen Hurts was attacking the field. He was going down the field. He was not checking the ball down, very rarely. He was top 5 in average distance thrown per attempt. I forget how you phrase it, but he was top 5 when he was playing. He was attacking down the field. I believe this Philadelphia offense can score a lot of touchdowns with Jalen Hurts at them. I believe they're going to be an explosive offense. And if Jalen Hurts is – we saw Lamar Jackson, what he did for Mark Andrews. There's a ceiling cap with these kind of quarterbacks who run that much and turn it into a run-centric offense.
Yeah.
But they can still have a breakout year. So when you're picking tight end 8, I'm not too concerned about it. I mean, it's a concern, but you have a concern with every guy outside of the top 3, to be frankly honest.
But to be honest, I think Dallas Goedert could be the one guy that we see jump in that top 5, because I do think, like you mentioned, with going down the field, just if he replaces Ertz's production, even from 2019, people forget in 2019, Ertz finished as tight end 2. Not
he's
points
good.
per game.
I don't think he's a raw athlete, though. I think he would have found a way to get us a 40 time if he was a raw athlete.
Yeah.
So I think that caps his ceiling a little bit. You look at the top 3. I don't really care about the top 5. There's no top 5 tier. There's a top 3 tier. You want to get into elite. We're talking about 15 plus points per game.
He's not
good. This is one of my concerns with TJ Hockenson, which we will get to, is just especially in this era, the guys at the top are athletes. They're very athletic and they're fast. And I'm not sure Dallas Goedert is in that tier of just raw talent.
Yeah, well, that kind of makes me figure out why you put your tight end 7, who your tight end 7 is. You're kind of giving me a framework here. But I like it because I am not high on this guy. So tell me who your tight end 7 is.
Well, that would be Mark Andrews.
Mark Andrews, who is overrated. He is overrated. He is overrated. Go ahead, David, but he's overrated.
That's fair. That's fair. You might be on to some. I try not to be biased. I have the Ravens cap. But I try not to let it affect me however. And in fact, I frankly don't like choosing Ravens most of the time because it's like I don't want to deal with players watching my team and having fantasy impacted.
Yeah.
But again, he's produced immediately in the NFL, and that's the most important box we talked about. It's the bottom line. We want NFL production in whichever way it comes. And 6.7 as a 13.8 year 2, 12.2. He's been over 12 points. He's close. The only thing, it's Lamar Jackson. That's the only concern. the 4.67. I shouldn't say the only concern because you're right. Maybe I'm letting my Ravens bias affect me. 4.67 40. He's not fast. 31-inch vertical. Again, he's not a super athlete. 18% dominator in college. That's yellow. That's not green.
Yeah.
Late breakout. He had 15.5 yards per reception, but I do remember he was like did he win the Mackey Award or was he a finalist?
I believe he was a finalist.
Best tight end in the country. So I don't have an issue with Mark Andrews, but I wouldn't say I'm comfortable with him in Dynasty. I want to, again, trade him for the top 3. I have 5 tight ends who I want as my starter on every single Dynasty team. And he's not one of them.
So he did win the Mackey. So he did win it.
If I had him though, I wouldn't be panicking because his floor is like the highest floor. I would say it's a little bit touch and go on a weekly basis, but he's going to give you something regardless, no matter what, and you're going to get the points on a season long basis.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. What I hate right now in startups, he's going as tight end 5, and you could get Noah, Hockenson, and these Dallas Goedert so much later. Like, his ADP, Andrew's ADP right now is 79. You could get even Irv Smith at 102. So you're looking at a vast kind of difference. And as much as Irv or any of these other guys, Dallas Goedert is going 105.
I'll talk about Irv Smith because he's someone who I had him in tight end 11 before I did this anatomical checklist.
Yeah.
And I bumped him out of my top 12 after compiling it because there is literally almost nothing to be excited about with his profile. And there's essentially 0 elite data points other than his yards per reception. He's 6'2". That's a concern. We don't see any elite tight end that small. It just doesn't happen. So he's not going to overpower linebackers and safeties. He's 4.63, which is good but not great. He's not faster than defensive backs. 32.5-inch vertical. Average, it's in the yellow. 14% dominator. That's in the red. That's not good at all. He didn't break out in college at all. He literally didn't have breakout age. That's, again, you don't want to hold it against him. Still not a good thing.
Yeah.
In the NFL, 4.9 points per game. Year 1 didn't produce 7.6 last year. It looked good towards the end of last year, but I really think he's going to be, again, like a floor guy. I don't see a whole lot of ceiling for Irv Smith, and that's why I bumped him down below Robert Tonyan, below Evan Engram, where I just think the ceiling is just – they could have a year where they would end up in that top tier.
That's fair. I think everything's perspective, right? And then as you hear David talk, he wants to get in that top tier. And I think that's a good way to look at it. Like, the one guy that drives me the most nuts in fantasy for tight ends is Hunter Henry. Because I feel like every time I start Hunter Henry, he gets me 7 points. I'm so tired of getting Hunter Henrys on my team. Like, you got to try to get for that top tier guys. And so that's what we're talking about with Irv. I do like Irv too. I think I got yelled at by one of your followers about Logan Thomas. I said, hey, I'd probably pick Irv in Dynasty just because he's younger. But they have a pretty similar, I think, viewpoint, ceiling floor-ish in the next couple years. I wasn't saying like, oh, I would definitely take Irv. I would just let it fall to me. Whatever value fell to me, that's the guy I would probably go with. So that's kind of how perspective there. So we're getting in our top 6 guys. And so I feel like these guys we're starting on that border of like, hey, these are my guys that I feel like could maybe get in those tiers. So who is your 6th?
Well, to put things in perspective, we're not quite in that next tier for me yet. I have 6, 7, 8 as one tier, which is 8 Goddard, 7 Andrews. I'm putting Gesicki down. I've been putting them up and down based on the athleticism and the draft capital. But we've decided today. I was getting a little blindsided. The clearer picture is coming into focus now. So Gesicki's down to the next tier with Jonnu, Engram, Tonyan, and he's flipped. But this tier is 3 guys: Goddard, Andrews, and TJ Hockenson. Yeah. To me, a lot of people they're not going to like this ranking because he's pretty much, other than Kyle Pitts, the consensus top tight end. Maybe Mark Andrews he's tied with, but I think at least on fantasy Twitter he's probably jumped Mark Andrews. Maybe not so in like the less extreme, the more casual form of the game. Maybe Andrews is still a little bit above him, but Hockenson, I like him. I really do, but he hasn't done like a whole lot more than Dallas Goedert. He doesn't look a whole lot different than Dallas Goedert on this sheet. 4.7 40. That's not good in any way. I mean, and I remember a few plays where he got chased down this year, and people were like, "Oh man, he is not fast." He has a good vertical, 37.5-inch vertical. I like that a lot. It shows me he is an athlete in some form. Maybe he doesn't have raw speed like that. 24% dominator rating, and it's good. It's in the green, but again, it's closer to like that middle tier than it is to like Noah Fant and Kyle Pitts. To put things in perspective, I'll compare Noah Fant and TJ Hockenson in every category here. Like draft capital, 8th pick for Hockenson, 20th pick for Fant. Okay, that's slight edge to Hockenson. 4.50 40 to Fant to 4.7, 39.5-inch vertical to 37.5, 30.4% dominator for Fant to 24% for Hockenson. Fant broke out at 19.8 years old. Hockenson at 21.2. Fant 16.5 yards per reception in college, 15.5 for Hockenson. 98% catch radius for Fant, 92 for Hockenson. Fant outproduced Hockenson year 1 as a pro. Hockenson only outproduced him 11-10 in year 2, and that's including the Kendall Hinton game and a game Fant played 5 snaps. If you take out the Hinton game in a game where Fant played 5 snaps, which I believe you absolutely should, you shouldn't count that as a game played if you want to actually get accurate data here. Fant outscored TJ Hockenson year 1 and year 2. He checks every other athletic box. He checks all the college production boxes better than TJ Hockenson. He looks like George Kittle, Darren Waller, and Travis Kelce from an athletic perspective. The only thing is the situation. But in Dynasty, I mean, I haven't played Dynasty for long. This will only be my 2nd year going into Dynasty. Like I said, I'm a redraft. I've been playing redraft 15 years. Dynasty is still new to me. I'm getting the message pretty clear after last year. You don't focus too much on situation or you're going to get burned. You focus on getting the best players. And Noah Fant, I believe, is far superior to TJ Hockenson in every category except for blocking, which, again, that's good for Noah Fant when we're talking about fantasy. So I have TJ Hockenson a tier below. I'm not sure he's ever going to be elite.
That's fair. I think the athletic problem, there's an athletic problem with Hockenson. He gets chased down. He doesn't have that breakaway speed. I don't think he gets targeted enough in the red zone. There were 7 games last year and he got targeted once in the red zone. I don't know necessarily if that's a scheme problem. They had a lot of scheme issues last year and problems there. And Goff doesn't help him. I saw somebody on social media was saying like, oh, they should draft Pitts. And then they have Pitts and Hockenson. Who's going to stop that? And I said Goff. That's who would stop that because he's not that production guy. Remember Higbee? Remember Everett? All these guys that we keep saying about. So I think Goff hurts him more than people want to admit. And they also don't have any weapons on that team. So he's going to get that same treatment that you saw Evan Engram get. But Evan Engram is an athletic profile and has that skill set. Hockenson doesn't. So I could see there being this year, especially if they don't get an upgrade of that position and their athletes around him. I think everybody says volume is king, but I don't even know if Hockenson has the athletic profile to get that volume. Is that fair?
It is fair. I actually wrote an entire thread making the case against TJ Hockenson for you to sell him for Noah Fant, Kyle Pitts, or one of the top 3 if you want to Twitter my name plus making the case against TJ Hockenson, you can find it. But like you said, the concern with the speed, it shows up in the stat department, the yards per reception. He's hit like 11 point, I can't remember off the top of my head, 11 point something and 10 point something yards per reception his first 2 years. That's a concern. You look at all of the elite tight ends. This is what this thread covers. I covered all of them. Basically, there's 13 elite tight ends in the past 2 decades. Yeah. And they had higher yards per reception, and it showed up mostly because they were running faster 40s. And the only guy who made this list with who was like as slow as him and had as low yards per reception as Hockenson was Zach Ertz. And if he turns into Zach Ertz, that's great. But Zach Ertz was the only one on this list. And you look at what Zach Ertz did, he had 3 years above 14 points per game. Which is kind of that elite category. The leading or the second leading target getter in those years was Nelson Aguilar, and Dallas Goedert.
Yeah.
So it was like extremely helpful having no target competition. So I'll disagree with you on that one. I think it's a good thing for Hockenson that they have nobody. But again, the draft, we don't know if they had a receiver in the draft. If they don't this year, they got 2 firsts next year, 2 firsts the year after that because of the Matthew Stafford trade. They're adding wide receiver talent very soon. I can guarantee you that. And TJ Hawkinson's not an athlete. He's not going to make explosive plays that show up in high yards per reception, make the most out of his reception totals. He needs like 80-plus receptions to get in that top tier, and I'm just not sure. Maybe he gets close this year. I mean, I just don't see it ever happening.
You could make a case maybe this year he sees the most targets he's going to see in the next 3 or 4 years. But
again, like you said, the quarterback gets worse. People say Galladay's gone. Galladay was gone last year. He's not getting less target competition than he had last year. He only had, you look at the stats, 723 yards last year. He needs to improve. I'm not sure he's going to improve. I would expect something around the same, maybe 70 receptions, 750 yards. We'll see if he gets the touchdowns again.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean,
and he's the most expensive.
He is. So he's going, it's basically after Pitts, it's Andrews, Hockenson. And then your guy, Fant, is actually going behind both those guys. So let's talk about Fant. He's David's tight end 5, Noah Fant. I love Fant. I have Fant a lot of places. One of my leagues, I'm in a 16-team super flex tight end premium league. I have Fant and Kittle as my tight end. So I am loving my life right now. What do you think of Fant? Last year he was hurt. He had some injuries. He had Drew Lock. He still has Drew Lock, so that makes me a little bit nervous. But what do you think of Fant?
Well, I already talked about the checklist.
So you already kind of went through that.
He checks every single box. There are only a couple guys in this who check every single box. He's one of them. I won't list it again. I will list it again. 4.5, 40, 39.5-inch vertical. I mean, come on, guys. 30.4% dominator in college, 19.8 breakout age, 16.5 yards per reception. He outproduced Hockenson year 1 and year 2 as well. Like you talk about the quarterbacks, it wasn't just this year. He dealt with Joe Flacco, Brandon Allen, and Drew Lock in year 1. And this has you gotta hope at least rectify the situation in some way going forward. It really it cannot get worse than it has been for Noah Fant. And the injuries as well. He suffered a high ankle sprain this past year in week 4, I believe. He missed week 6. He fought through it. He left the game 2 weeks later against Atlanta in like week 8. And then later in the year, like I said, he had another game where he had 5 snaps and left with an illness. He was injured last year, fighting through it, and the worst. Once the circumstances around get even like to average, because they've been way below average, you get him to average, this guy could explode. He has the yards per reception. He's shown it. He went over 14 yards per reception his first year. He can turn 60, 70 receptions into 900 yards. So that the upside is just so much higher with Noah Fant. If anybody's going to enter that top tier other than Kyle Pitts, I think it's got to be Noah Fant.
Okay, so if I had to pick, gun to your head, hey, this is my guy that I think could maybe finish as a tight end 1, would you take him? Other than the other guys, you would take Fant maybe as your dynasty tight end 1 moving forward, like your Mount Rushmore in maybe 3 or 4 year time frame?
Oh, and absolutely. When we're talking about not just like a redraft, he is the guy I will stamp my name on. I've been stamping my name pretty hard on Twitter. I don't know if I can stamp it any harder, but if you don't know, obviously I can. I'll keep stamping away because he's my guy going forward. I traded Andrews plus to turn him in. I tried getting Fant plus for my Andrews, didn't work out. I was willing to pay Andrews. I only had to pay Jeff Wilson. I would have paid more to go get Noah Fant because I believe he is that guy who's going to elevate in if not next year, then the next 2 to 3 years. That's
fair. No, I like that. All right, well, we're going to go to his tight end 4 now. So this, I love this pick. So who is your tight end 4?
It's pretty obvious, isn't it? Everybody's tight end 4 at this point. He could go higher in some people.
He's tight end 1 in some people, David. There are some people.
People are coming around on this guy, and I'm loving it because I have dealt with years of being mocked and abused for my tight end selections and how early I was taking Travis Kelce in the first round, not just last year, 2 years ago. And I was getting the side eye from all my friends. I was winning these leagues in my own leagues, but they give me the side eye on draft day. Now it's like it ain't frowned upon anymore so much because people are starting to understand, especially when you talk about Twitter, just the information, it's just infinite now. So everybody, if something's out, people are going to find out about it. And people are finding out about these top tight ends. And Kyle Pitts, oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh. We talked about I'm going to be making a case for Travis Kelce as the redraft 101.
Yeah.
I'm also going to be making a case for Kyle Pitts as the Dynasty rookie 101 in every format over Trevor Lawrence and Justin. Like, to clarify, obviously, I would say trade down. Yeah. But I believe he's going to have the most valuable career of any player in this draft class. I mean, people want to
hot take. Look at you, David.
I don't think it's that hot. You look at this tight end landscape, he is off the charts. And people want to say, okay, Evan Engram, OJ Howard, David Njoku, we've seen it before. This will be part of the thread. You look at this, the dominator, the breakout age, the yards per reception, none of them compare. Kyle Pitts, to give you a little perspective right here, 32.3% dominator, 18.9% or 18.9 breakout age, 17.9 yards per reception. I don't have another tight end in my top 30 tight ends who averaged 17.9 yards per reception in their college career. I only have like 5 of them who had 30% dominators. Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts, and the rest of them went to small schools pretty much. Yeah. Gerald Everett, Jonnu Smith, Dallas Goedert, like these, the only guys hitting 30%. Albert O, 31%. Keep an eye on him as a sleeper. Oh my God, he checks every box. But Kyle Pitts, he was the first tight end to finish in the top 10 Heisman voting in 43 years. 43 years. This guy is not just generational, he's multi-generational. Yeah. He is coming into the league as the dynasty tight end forward. This has never happened as far as I know. I don't believe Evan Engram, OJ Howard, and David Njoku came in as the dynasty tight end 4 without playing a snap. People say Evan Engram, if he has an Evan Engram type rookie year, 730, he will be the dynasty tight end 1 by the end. By halfway through the season, he will be looked at as the dynasty tight end 1. And you know how I feel about tight end. We talked about it. We had about 7 tight ends in a 12-team league. You have 30 quarterbacks, 32 quarterbacks. The scarcity difference is just it favors tight end exponentially over running back, over quarterback, especially over wide receiver, especially. Yeah. So,
is there a landing spot you'd be worried about? Or are you not? He's such a dominator rating. You're like, hey,
there's landing spots I would love, but there's not one I would be worried about.
Well, give me your top 2 landing spots you would love.
Anywhere with an elite quarterback.
Okay.
I mean, with any player, I think being tethered to an elite quarterback, it raises the ceiling. So, I mean, you talk about if he landed in Dallas, Derrick Jones, I wouldn't care how many receivers. I would love if he landed in Dallas. I mean, that would be fantastic to me. Anywhere with the top quarterback, Buffalo, trade up. I mean, I could think of all of these top passing quarterback. I don't want him in Baltimore. Let me clarify that. That would depress me a little bit. Because in more than one ways. So we'll just say, please don't go to Baltimore. Baltimore don't trade up. That's not generally something that they would do. But he is just.
I will say, everybody out there that thinks Pitts getting drafted by Dallas is not going to happen, you don't know Jerry Jones. So he is really truly a best player available. That dude wanted to draft Johnny Manziel. So I'm just telling you guys, like, I would love Pitts to go there. I think we really need to go line or corner, but if Pitts is sitting there, it is going to be very hard unless someone trades up and tries to grab him. Now, if he went to Dallas, I think that would be phenomenal for everybody involved, especially Dak owners. And Dak's my QB3 in Dynasty, so I would love that. So for me, in my perspective, I think Pitts could go to that offense. There's not a ton of offenses that I'm worried about, but like you said, I really want him to go to an offense where he's the featured tight end, and there's a good quarterback, because I like with Fant, he can only go as far as Locke gets him there. Like, there's only so much you do. Pitts is a little bit of a different athlete, so I understand that perspective. But I would love those spots.
Yeah, and I'm not concerned about year one. Like, I will have him high in my redraft rankings as well. And that's what a lot of people are concerned about, investing a top 3, top 5 dynasty rookie pick on him.
Yeah.
They say just trade for him next year after his first year when he doesn't go off. I really don't think you're going to have the opportunity to do that, especially when you talk about the fact that we have it baked into our minds now that tight ends take time. Nobody who's investing in Kyle Pitts is going to freak out if he doesn't go off the rails insane in year one and just trade him away. You're going to have to pay probably more than you would have to pay right now. And you look at the way he's going to be used. People are holding the rookie tight end expectations against a guy who every respected professional is saying is going to be utilized like a wide receiver. He can play the X, the Y, the Z, and he can play every position, and he will be. By all indications, he's going to be used in every way that a wide receiver would be. And you look at these rookie wide receivers coming into the league.
Yeah.
Are they performing like rookie tight ends? Is that a concern? Because it's not for me. If he's utilized like a rookie wideout, he could put up 800 yards, 50 receptions, and 5+ touchdowns. Ain't nobody trading that away. He'll be the dynasty tight end with that. He puts up 45 receptions for 700 yards and 4. He will still probably be the dynasty tight end 1 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have to perform well to gain value throughout the year, because that tight ends take time expectation is working in his favor.
I think that we could see, very realistically, you tight end 1 for sure. I think we could see Kittle Pitts. That's your 2. That's kind of where realistically going into next year's startups, Kittle Pitts, or even Pitts ahead of Kittle, and it'd be very close. But let's go to your third one, because this hurts me as a Kittle truther. Who is your tight end 3? Because you hurt my feelings a little bit here, David.
I only rank them 1 through 3 because I have to rank them.
That's
1
fair.
through 3.
That's fair.
There are certain rankings where it's like however I wake up, whichever side of the bed I wake up on that day.
Yeah. Well, we saw today. You changed your 9, 10, and 11 just like that. So,
I don't think I'm going to be changing this one.
No.
I do believe, though, in redraft, my rankings are a little bit clear.
Yeah.
But in Dynasty, I believe all 3 of these tight ends, Kittle, Waller, and Kelce, you can make a case for any one of these guys as the Dynasty tight end 1.
That's fair.
Kelce obviously has the best production. We talked about it, 20.9 points. We talked about it all in 80+ receptions, 1,000 yards, 5 straight seasons, Hall of Fame of production, hasn't missed a game in 7 years. He is a cheat code right now. Darren Waller is 3 years younger. He's 28 to Kelce's 31. He also outproduced George Kittle's best year. The only thing George Kittle, frankly, to be honest, to be fair to Darren Waller, the only thing George Kittle has on him is 1 year. That's it, because Darren Waller's past year this year was the best fantasy season out of any year George Kittle put up. It was better by a full point per game. Yeah. George Kittle has not put up a season as good as Darren Waller did last year yet in his career, even when he was healthy. And Darren Waller isn't missing time. I don't want to put too much stock into the injury prone. I've been taught by Dr. Edmund, injuries, you got to be careful with that injury prone label. But frankly, to be honest, I've talked about it before. He missed time in college in both his junior and senior year, had a significant injury as a freshman. He's missed time. He missed 10 games the past 2 years. Darren Waller ain't missed a game yet. And he's had the best fantasy season out of either of them, and he's only 1 year older. So, I mean, maybe if they just take a quarterback I put Kittle back up above, because you're right. Next year, there will be a difference. It's a difference between 28 now, or he'll be 29 next year and 28. And people are going to be holding 29 against Waller a little more than they're holding 28 against him. No, that's just how it works. Yeah. So if you're looking ahead, like you said, you can make the case for Kittle as the dynasty tight end 1 as well. But right now, I think I have him at 3. But again, I'll take any one of these guys. I'll take Kittle today, Waller tomorrow, Kelce the next day. I don't care. Just give me one of them.
So
at least one of them.
So when you look at these guys, so he has Kittle as his tight end 3. That's where he finished last year. Again, Kittle, he was hurt. Well, I'm going to get into Kittle a little bit of his ADP really quick. He has Waller, tight end 2. And we're looking at where Waller finished. I think Waller's going to see that. He had 145 targets. He's going to see the same kind of, I feel like, volume this year. lose Aguilar. They didn't really bring anybody in that I'm like, oh my God. So I think that Waller's going to get that. Put it in perspective in front of ADP right now, dynasty-wise. Kittle's going at 31. So he's essentially going around middle of the third. Waller's going at 50. So that's what his DLF ADP is right now. So I think I know your answer. You'd rather wait, stack your guys, like your running backs, and then hit Waller in maybe the 4th round, 5th round? Is that an easy option for you?
Are we talking? We're talking dynasty, right?
Dynasty, yes.
Yeah, in redraft, I already said I would take all 3 in the 1st round, especially you're talking about the back half of the 1st. Like, there's no differentiation in those running backs between the late 1st and the late 2nd, even this next year. So I'll take them in the 1st, grab my running back in 2nd. In dynasty, I'll take, like I said, any one of those 3 in the 2nd round. In just a PPR format. I think the quarterbacks are going off pretty fast in super flex format, so I would grab the quarterback just because I know I can get one of those tight ends. I would take Waller in the 2nd with ease. With ease, I would take Waller in the 2nd, even in a non-premium format. This is the most important position to secure, and they don't change. They do not change the top tight ends. They are almost the same every year. You have a couple guys who maybe have a good year and go up. But overall, Travis Kelce has been the tight end one the past 5 years. The past 5 years. It doesn't change running back. It changes yearly and weekly. So I'll invest in one of the 3 tight ends before pretty much any running back not named CMC. I mean, even Jonathan Taylor, like, I'll be happy if I had Waller over Jonathan Taylor because I can running backs are going to change. Yeah. And this is part of the Travis Kelce thought I'll put out. Like, it's not just this past year where they came out of nowhere for the rookies. It's almost more than 50% of the RB1 finishers every year came outside of round 1 in redraft. So it's these guys who are just elevating who we're not expecting. They're guys at the top who fail. Yeah. The tight ends are not going to fail unless they get hurt. George Kittle getting hurt, that's the only way you're going to get screwed from picking one of these guys, I think, because the production is pretty much locked in. And the advantage, that's the thing, the advantage. Because if the production fluctuates at running back, the advantage can disappear because there's so many different running backs. At tight end, we talked about it. Darren Waller was 2.5 points behind Travis Kelce, but he was 7 points per game above everybody else. He can decrease by 2 points per game, and he's still a major advantage. Yeah. So I want that advantage on my team. I want it forever. So if I have one of the top 3, I'll still grab Kyle Pitts. Because I want that advantage, and nobody's going to be able to take it from you unless you give it away. Running back, wide receiver, there's going to be new ones next year who you're going to love coming into the draft. There's going to be guys who get hurt who you can trade for. If one of these top 3 tight ends get hurt, maybe you can trade for them. That's probably your only chance. And even then, slim chance. So I'll take them in the 2nd round.
No, that's great. You guys listen to this. This is great stuff. I hope you're listening and getting better at fantasy because that's the point. And I think that is true. And then you would love the fact that Waller's going to the 5th because you can get him like that. You could realistically get Kittle, Waller, Pitts. You could just stack some guys and kind of work your way through. Now, this next guy, I feel like he's going to be tight end 1 till the day we all die, and that's Travis Kelce. David's talked about it where he's finished. Before the season, you'll find this funny. I did a dynasty Mount Rushmore for tight ends. And I put Kelce as my number 1 dynasty Rushmore, and I had actually some people tell me Kelce like, well, he's pretty old. And I said, listen, bro, okay, he's going to be my dynasty tight end 1 until he completely just falls off. And I compared him to Tony Gonzalez. And Tony Gonzalez, throughout his career, finished at that tight end 4 mark, even when he was 35. So I think Kelce will finish there. So we've talked about Kelce a lot, but just in general, how long do you think Kelce's going to keep this going? If you had to put it on perspective, do you still think next 3 years he's a productive tight end in the league?
Well, for starters, I believe he's going to be worth the redraft 101 in value in 2021. Yeah. So that's a lot. Even if you get only that, if he falls off the year after, if he's great this next year again, number 1 tight end putting up 100+ receptions, 1,400 yards, double-digit touchdowns, he could drop off the face, so he probably wins you a championship this next year. I think he gets at least 3 elite more seasons. He'll turn 32 mid-season this year. So he'll go into the 2nd season, 32 and turn 33. The 3rd year, he'll go into a 33 and turn 34. I believe you're getting elite seasons, those no matter what. And like you said, he's tethered to Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. I mean, I could see him putting up another 15 plus points per game at 35, possibly 36. So it depends on what your time frame is. How much more do you want? I guess because Darren Waller's 3 years younger, George Kittle's 4 years younger. So if you want to project them playing into their mid-30s as well, there is a case to take either of those over Travis Kelce in Dynasty.
And
I think any of them you can make the case for.
And we can be ageist sometimes, right? Like, I feel like sometimes we fall in love with these younger guys. Well, you guys got to win your league too. Like, that's the whole point of this. I feel like sometimes we find in Dynasty, I always find guys that are in a perpetual rebuild. And so they're like, well, I'm going to go grab Irv and I'll just rebuild with him. And it's like, well, how would you grab Kelce and then you can draft a tight end and rebuild with him on your bench and see if they fit. So I think Kelce, like you said, I think he's going to finish. He's realistically the Chiefs wide receiver 2. Him and Hill are just.
You could call him the wide receiver 1.
You could argue that, right? Like, we talked about this whole podcast about how important quarterbacks are. They are massively important, and he has the best one by far. So you got to pair him with that. So we know, just to recap. So for everybody out there that has been listening, Tonyan tight end 12. I'm going to go through the original one. I know we moved Gesicki around a little bit. Evan Engram tight end 11. Jonnu Smith tight end 10. Mike Gesicki tight end 9. Tight end 8 Dallas Goedert. Tight end 7 Mark Andrews. Tight end 6 T.J. Hockenson. Tight end 5 is Noah Fant. Tight end 4 Kyle Pitts. And then we had Kittle, Waller, and Kelce. Now, the last thing I want to do, just I know we're running out a little bit of time here, is that I wanted to I'm going to throw out 4 guys. Actually 5, because I'm going to throw out 5. I want you just to tell me, and it can be very quick, or you can just expand on it a little bit, if you would consider them buys right now at the position or sells. So my first guy is a guy that everybody literally got in fights with last year that I saw. Are you buying or selling Tyler Higbee?
Oh, man, Kevin. I am selling Tyler Higbee so fast. I wrote an extensive thread about fading Tyler Higbee last year.
Yeah.
Literally nothing has changed on my opinion from him. He is with Sean McVay does not seem inclined to utilize him in any way as a receiver. Gerald Everett left. They drafted Bryson Hopkins last year, I believe, to fill that Gerald Everett role. It is good that Matthew Stafford's there. That's any quarterback upgrade is good. But, man, if I could use him to get any, tight end that I actually feel good about or somewhat in, that 8 to 12 range, I would use him as a chip and just pay up. I'm fading Tyler Higbee.
Man, people were buying big time into Tyler Higbee last year. They were, and I was not. I don't have one share of Tyler Higbee because, to me, I'm always about value, and the value just did not make sense to me when I was looking at where he was going compared to some of the other guys. I wasn't trying to grab Tyler Higbee. I do think Stafford helps a little bit, but that's still the same offense. So when we're looking at hey, where are they going to go with him? I think that we could see maybe a little bit of an uptick, but it's not really worth it. For example, someone traded Tyler Higbee straight up for Darnell Mooney. Would you do that?
I would take the Mooney side easily.
Okay. Easily. All right. I'm going to give you some options here. I'm going to kind of throw it out there. All right. Now, you be gentle to me here, David. What about Blake Jarwin? What are you doing with my boy Blake?
I'm holding.
Okay.
I don't think I'm buying or selling. I'm holding. I mean, we talk about the anatomical checklist. It's really, 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 really bad for Blake Jarwin.
Yeah.
He was an undrafted free agent. He had 0 draft capital. 4.73 40. That ain't good. 34.5-inch vertical. That's solid. That's in the light greens. That's about it. 7% dominator rating. He didn't even touch the ball. He had a good yards per reception, but 3 years in the pro, his highest points per game, 5.8. I mean, and Dalton Schultz, I think I have Dalton Schultz 1 spot above Blake Jarwin in my rankings. He's younger. He has better draft capital. He was a better college dominator. The 40 times essentially the same. He's got 9.2 points per game through 3 years. Jarwin didn't top 5.3. So I think either tight end, just being tethered in that offense to Dak Prescott and how much passing volume they had with him, has upside, because situation can make or break some of these nobody, no skill. I'm sorry to call Blake Jarwin that average skill tight ends. I'm not paying anything for him. if you want to take a flyer on him at the end of the draft, sure.
That's fair. All right. Well, hey, you know what? I want to throw a couple guys out there. Hey, I appreciate it. David coming on. I've been wanting to get him on for a while. He killed his tight end stuff. If you want any tight end information, any fantasy information at all, follow him, Guru Fantasy World on Twitter. I appreciate you coming on again, David. What is something you got coming out next? I know you talked about your website and that. Any threads coming out, or are you just kind of taking some time waiting for the draft?
The Kyle Pitts for the 101 Dynasty Rookie 101. That'll be the next thread.
All right. Well, hey, check that out. I'm excited for that one, and we appreciate you coming on. And, hey, he updated his rankings for you. He did everything for you today, so make sure you give him a shout-out, and we appreciate it. So thanks, David.
Did you get all that? If not, make sure you head over to hammercast.com, subscribe, and join the Hammer Nation. Until next time, keep grinding.